Hey, good morning. I'm Gabriel Spitzer. It's Thursday. This is Seattle Now. Yesterday, Amazon cut its headcount by 16,000 employees. KUOW's AI and economy reporter Monica Nickelsburg will explain what this means for the company's future plans and how it might affect us here in Seattle. But first, let's get you caught up. King County Metro is rolling out a new batch of battery electric buses today, the first ones with enhanced barriers for driver safety and also a new color scheme. It's part of the county's long-term transition to a zero-emission fleet. The 10 new electric buses join 40 others in the fleet operating in South King County. Kids' use of social media is on the agenda for state lawmakers in Olympia today. A proposal in the state Senate would require parental consent for kids 16 and younger to be able to create a social media account. It would also ban social media companies from collecting personal information from minors. Lawmakers will hear public testimony at 8 this morning. And Seattle's Fresh Bucks program is growing in 2026. The Seattle Times reports 4,500 households have joined the program since the beginning of the year. It provides funds for people to buy fruits and vegetables at several grocery stores throughout Seattle and also farmers markets. The benefit amount also increased this year from $40 to $60 per month. City officials say if you were already enrolled in Fresh Bucks last year, you don't need to reapply for 2026. Check back for more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. Amazon has been making a lot of news this week, mostly about how it's getting smaller. Its physical footprint is shrinking. Whole Foods is here to stay, but Amazon Fresh and Amazon Go stores are on their way out, with all locations closing. And its corporate workforce is dwindling too. 16,000 people got layoff notices this week. Let's get into what this news might mean about big tech and the future of a big tech hub like Seattle with Monica Nickelsburg. She's KUOW's AI and economy reporter and co-host of our sibling podcast, Booming. Monica, thanks for taking the time to chat.
I'm happy to be here, although I wish it was for happier news.
Yeah, well, we just learned about this. What do we know so far about the big picture, 16,000 layoffs?
What we know so far is these are all corporate employees. It doesn't affect Amazon's fulfillment centers, and they're across the U.S. and international.
Yeah. Do we know much about which kinds of jobs are impacted or where these jobs are based? Do we know how many are based in Washington State, for example?
Not yet. It doesn't seem like Amazon has finished filing the necessary reports with the state, so we don't have those Washington numbers. If we take the last round of layoffs in October, which was about 14,000 as any guide, that ended up being about 2,200 in Washington State, I believe.
Wow. Okay. Now, when you add this round of cuts to that previous round of cuts you just alluded to, it becomes the biggest round of layoffs in the company's history, right? So what are they saying about why they're making these moves?
Yeah, it is the largest reduction in force Amazon has ever done, a total of 30,000 people. And what Amazon says is that this is still about reducing bureaucracy, becoming more efficient, and scaling back after hiring really aggressively during the pandemic. In those years, Amazon roughly doubled its headcount, and it says it's still correcting for that. I actually talked to an employee who was hired back then in 2020 to help Amazon plan and predict how many people it was going to need to deal with all of this pandemic-driven demand. His name is Matt McLean.
When you're in a period of massive growth, it takes a lot more people to make that happen. So when you say we hired more than we needed, we actually hired what we needed at the time, but we needed fewer bodies moving forward.
And McLean himself actually got swept up in that downsizing. He was laid off in October as part of the 14,000.
Oh, wow.
So that's what Amazon says is going on here. And Amazon CEO Andy Jassy said just last week that artificial intelligence doesn't have anything to do with these layoffs. But there is a feeling within the company that that's not the whole story. I've talked to several employees who say that as their teams get smaller, Amazon is giving them AI tools, and the expectation is you should be able to do the same amount of work or maybe even more with fewer people because of this automation.
I think that there's an expectation. Be more efficient by using AI.
And they feel like there's a lot of pressure on them to show that they're using these tools, even if it doesn't necessarily make them more efficient.
Oh, interesting. And so these aren't necessarily jobs that are being replaced by AI. However, the remaining employees are sort of expected to make up for the losses by leveraging AI. Is that right?
Yeah, the phrase that you hear a lot is more with less.
Huh. Everyone loves to hear that, right?
Right.
What does that look like? I mean, do we have a sense of what the workplace is going to look like down the road?
Well, if you ask Amazon, I do think what it looks like down the road is having fewer employees, but the expectation being that they can continue to grow and add productivity. Again, Amazon has not said that these layoffs are related to AI, but its CEO, Andy Jassy, has said in the past that he expects down the line them to be able to operate with a smaller workforce because of AI. What it looks like right now, though, is a little bit more of a mixed bag. At least what I hear from employees is that it's very stressful. These tools are not ready to pick up the slack, that you can't just go from an 8-person team to a 4-person team and expect to get the same amount, if not more, done. So I don't really know what this interim period looks like.
I've also seen a lot of speculation that just because Amazon has had such a massive financial outlay trying to beef up its AI infrastructure and build data centers and plow all this money into the hardware, that they just faced a lot of pressure to cut costs to make room for that. Does that align with what people are saying in the company?
Well, officially, no. Amazon is not saying that these layoffs are tied to how much money they're spending on data centers. But more broadly across the tech industry, that is the kind of expert consensus about what's going on here. And some companies like Microsoft have just told me, employees are very expensive. Of course, we don't want to downsize, but part of the reason that we are is to free up capital to spend on these multi-billion-dollar data centers that are taking over.
So they've been a little bit more explicit about it than Amazon has.
They have, yeah. And the reality is just that these infrastructure investments are so expensive. The amount of money that's being spent on them is really eye-popping. And historically, one of the biggest line items for a tech company was its talent. I'm old enough to remember when companies were fighting over employees with huge salaries and crazy benefits because talent was seen as the biggest asset in the industry. Now I think it's starting to feel more like a liability as these companies want to spend their dollars on data centers, not workers.
They don't want expensive, talented, highly credentialed workers necessarily.
Not necessarily, at least not as many.
Well, thinking about the impacts of 16,000 layoffs and some portion of that being here in Washington State, I mean, I wonder, do we get a clue during the first round of this when this happened in the fall and 14,000 employees were laid off at that time? Do we get a sense of how layoffs at that scale will impact our community?
Yeah, and this is something that we explored in depth on our latest Booming episode, which is our economy podcast. We are starting to see some ripple effects in the economy here. Seattle's unemployment rate in November was 5.1%, which is quite a bit higher than the national rate of 4.5% that month. We saw about 13,000 people laid off in the King County area last year. And last year, the broader Puget Sound region lost jobs for the first time since the pandemic.
Have the major layoffs at Amazon then driven further contractions in this sector? For example, there's this whole ecosystem that's kind of sprung up around companies like Amazon and Microsoft. Do those companies then lose out on investment potentially?
I haven't reported in depth on that, so I couldn't say for sure. But one thing that the tech industry tends to do is kind of succumb to peer pressure. They kind of follow trends. And so if one or two of the big companies is doing something, there's suddenly this feeling that all of the companies need to be doing the same thing to be competitive. And if there were a trendsetter, it would be Amazon. All companies want to be doing what Amazon is doing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk for a little bit about what happens to the workers who are losing their jobs. I know you interviewed people who lost their jobs in the last round of layoffs in the fall. How has life been for those folks? I mean, obviously it's difficult, but have they managed to find other work?
It's been really difficult. I have talked to a lot of tech workers who have been laid off in the past few years, and many of them are still struggling to find a new job. The industry is shedding jobs. It's getting more difficult to break into. A lot of people think that's because of AI, and it's really hard to say what role that's playing because there are other economic factors happening too. It's that low hire, low fire environment, although with this big layoff, it's more of a fire environment.
Low hire,
More fire.
So for folks who have just lost their job, I mean, are there going to be other opportunities in the Seattle area, in our tech sector? Can we absorb this many people, or is it going to be a case where folks are going to have to probably leave the market in order to find work?
Well, in the past, our economy has been doing so well and we've been adding so many jobs that we have been able to absorb layoffs, that those folks could find something new. I'm a little more nervous about it this time because we did lose jobs for the first time since the pandemic, and before that, the Great Recession last year. So
our net jobs went down.
Our net jobs went down, yeah, which is not what you want. And especially if you work in tech and want to stay in tech, it's a tough time. I've talked to laid off workers who have left the sector entirely. I've been chatting with one who is now driving a shuttle for tech workers who used to work for a tech company. And I would say looking for opportunities where you can maybe use those tech skills, but in a company that's outside of this industry, you know, a hospital, a school, somewhere where if you have IT skills, they could still be really useful, but maybe they're hiring a little bit more.
I wonder, are these trends happening more so in Seattle than in other tech hubs, or is this a phenomenon that's going on all over the place?
I think it's happening in all major tech hubs. I think we're feeling it deeply here in Seattle because such a high percentage of our workforce does work in tech. And then, like you said, there are those satellites around the tech industry that benefit from workers who can spend a lot of money, you know, restaurants. The engine of the economy here for the past decade or so has really been the tech industry. And I do expect that there could be ripple effects if it starts to contract or even just not grow as fast.
Well, let's talk more about what that looks like. Like for a non-tech person who's not employed by one of these companies or married to an employee or whatever, are they going to notice? Like, is this going to impact our communities in ways that are apparent even if you're not directly affected?
Well, I think Amazon's layoffs are part of a broader story about uncertainty in the economy right now. And uncertainty can be kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're nervous about losing your job or you've just lost your job, you're probably not going out to eat as many times a week. You're probably not taking as many vacations or buying things that you don't really need. Maybe you're tightening your grocery budget. And all of those restrictions have impacts on the businesses that, you know, you're a customer of. I don't know if the average Seattleite will notice a difference between yesterday and tomorrow, but I think overall, as things feel a little bit shakier in the economy, that's something that we're all feeling.
I guess just to sort of wrap up, I mean, where do you think we are at in this story? Like, is this the end of a chapter? Is this the end of a cycle? Are we likely to see more layoffs from Amazon, but also from other large tech companies that operate here?
Amazon addressed that in their statement that they put out. You know, they understand there's a concern that this is the new normal and there's going to be another big cut every few months. And they said that they are trying to avoid that. I don't know that they entirely ruled it out, but that's not their expectation. But more broadly, you know, I've talked to experts about this and they said that they do expect more layoffs this year, whether at Amazon or other companies or other sectors of the economy.
Yeah, I noticed that Amazon said that it's not the plan to make this like a cyclical thing, but that seemed like, to me at least, like they were maybe leaving themselves a little bit of wiggle room.
I think that's a fair read.
All right, well, what are you watching for next?
I am watching to see if other companies follow suit. In the past few years, we've seen these sort of like outbreak events where one tech company cuts jobs and other ones draft behind it. And actually, we have seen a little bit of that this week already. Meta cut some jobs, Expedia cut some jobs. So I'm waiting to see if there's another big tech company that's thinking about layoffs that's like, well, why don't we just catch this Amazon news cycle rather than having all the heat on us by doing it in a couple months?
Yeah, that would track. All right, well, Monica Nickelsburg is KUOW's AI and economy reporter and co-host of our sibling podcast, Booming. Monica, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you listening to Seattle Now, and thanks to our generous donors for the support you give the show. You can give Seattle Now a boost by clicking the link in the show notes and following, rating, and reviewing the show on your podcast app. Today's episode was produced by Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. Our production team also includes Vaughn Jones, Andy Hurst, Paige Browning, and Patricia Murphy. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Gabriel Spitzer. We'll see you tonight for Evening Headlines.